The mayor cleared his throat and announced, "Gentlemen, we have 1 woman and 24 bachelors. We'll draw names fair and square." But when ranch hand Jake Wilson saw the fear in the woman's eyes, he knew this lottery was about to become the fight of his life. Montana Territory, spring of 1883. The town of Cedar Falls had a problem that couldn't be solved with gold or guns. After the mine collapse that killed 17 men and the fever that took 8 more, the remaining population stood at 73 souls, 72 men and 1 woman. That woman was Catherine Kate O'Malley, the 24-year-old daughter of the town's deceased doctor. She had stayed behind when other families fled, tending to the sick and wounded with skills her father had taught her. Now, as the only eligible female in a 100-mile radius, she had become the center of a situation that threatened to tear the community apart. The miners' hall buzzed with nervous energy as Mayor Thompson shuffled through his papers. 24 men sat in rough wooden chairs, their faces a mixture of hope, desperation, and barely contained aggression. Some had been without female companionship for years. Others had never known the touch of a woman's hand. Jake Wilson stood at the back of the room, his tall frame leaning against the wall, arms crossed. At 28, he was one of the younger men present, but his weathered hands and serious gray eyes spoke of hard years working cattle drives and breaking horses. Unlike the others, he hadn't come here by choice. "Now, I know this situation ain't ideal for nobody," Mayor Thompson continued, mopping sweat from his brow despite the cool spring air. "But Miss O'Malley has graciously agreed to this arrangement for the good of the community." Jake's eyes found Kate sitting in the front row, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She wore a simple brown dress, her auburn hair pulled back severely, but nothing could hide the intelligence in her green eyes or the way her shoulders trembled slightly. When their gazes met for just a moment, Jake saw something that made his stomach clench. Pure, unmitigated fear. "The rules are simple," the mayor announced, producing a worn hat. "Every eligible bachelor's name goes in. We draw 1 name, and that man gets to court Miss O'Malley proper-like for 2 weeks before the wedding." "What if she don't want to marry the man whose name gets drawn?" called out Pete Morrison, a grizzled prospector with tobacco-stained teeth. Mayor Thompson's face reddened. "She's already agreed to abide by the results. Ain't that right, Miss O'Malley?" Kate's voice was barely audible. "Yes, sir." Jake studied her profile, noting the way her jaw clenched, the rigid set of her spine. This wasn't agreement. This was surrender. And something about that didn't sit right with him. "Jake Wilson." The mayor's voice cut through his thoughts. "You're on the list, son. Come put your name in the hat." Every head in the room turned toward Jake. He pushed off from the wall slowly, feeling the weight of 23 pairs of eyes on him. When he reached the front, he paused beside Kate's chair. "Miss O'Malley," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "You sure about this?" She looked up at him, startled. For a moment, her carefully composed mask slipped, and he saw the desperation underneath. "I don't have a choice," she whispered. Jake nodded once, then turned to the mayor. "I'm not participating." The room erupted in confused murmurs. Mayor Thompson's face went purple. "What do you mean you're not participating?" "Every unmarried man participates. That's the rule." "Whose rule?" Jake asked calmly. "The town council's rule." "We voted." Jake looked around the room at the faces of men he'd known for 3 years, men he'd worked alongside, drunk with, and considered friends. "Funny thing about votes," he said. "Kate didn't get one." The murmurs grew louder. Someone shouted, "She's just 1 woman, Wilson." "We got 24 men who need wives." "And she's got 1 life," Jake replied. "Seems to me that ought to count for something." Kate was staring at him now, her eyes wide with something that might have been hope. Mayor Thompson slammed his hand on the podium. "Wilson, you put your name in that hat, or you can pack your gear and get out of Cedar Falls." Jake considered this for a moment. He had a job at the Morrison Ranch, a small cabin he'd built with his own hands, and 3 years of roots in this community. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. Then he looked at Kate again, saw the way she was watching him like he might be her last chance at salvation, and made his choice. "I reckon I'll pack my gear then." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Kate did something that shocked everyone in the room. She stood up. "If Mr. Wilson isn't participating," she said, her voice stronger now, "then neither am I." Chaos erupted. Men jumped to their feet, shouting, cursing, demanding explanations. Mayor Thompson banged his gavel frantically, but the noise only grew louder. Through it all, Jake and Kate stood facing each other in the eye of the storm. He extended his hand to her, palm up, waiting. "You don't even know me," she said over the din. "I know enough," he replied. "I know you deserve better than this." She stared at his outstretched hand for a heartbeat, then another. Then, with a deep breath that seemed to draw courage from somewhere deep inside her, she placed her small hand in his large, calloused one. "Together?" he asked. "Together," she agreed. Hand in hand, they walked toward the door of the miners' hall. Behind them, 23 men realized they'd just lost their only chance at a bride, and their anger was turning dangerous. But Jake Wilson had faced down stampeding cattle and wild mustangs. A room full of disappointed bachelors didn't scare him nearly as much as the thought of watching fear dim the light in Kate O'Malley's green eyes. As they stepped out into the cool Montana evening, Kate squeezed his hand. "What happens now?" she asked. Jake looked down at her, this brave woman who'd chosen the unknown over certain misery, and felt something shift in his chest. "Now," he said, "we write our own rules." And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky above Cedar Falls, two souls who'd never expected to find freedom in each other began to discover that sometimes the best things in life weren't won in a lottery. They were chosen with an open heart and a willing hand.